All right, I'm here as promised. So a couple of things. We're gonna start chapter 1 in just a minute. So happy Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day to all y'all. Today I decided that the best gift I could give you was the gift of me. Just as transparent as I can be. So this is a work of love. This is a work of healing. This is a work of growth. If I get emotional, it's not because I'm stuck. It's because sometimes I mourn for who I used to be because I didn't see all that I really was. And now I see it. And I thank God for sticking by me through it all. But we're going to get through this. We're going to heal. So real quick, my goal was I was going to get a tripod and I was going to have the TV on the fireplace and I was going to record and make it this whole soothing vibe. And if you know me in real life, you know I'm going to pray before I do anything. And so I prayed and I said, well, God, let your will be done. Like, let's run it how you want to run it. I sacrificed my plan so yours can come to fruition. I can't find my tripod. I don't know where it's at. I tried putting it on the fireplace, but then I had to remember the commercials come on. I can't control them. Then I had this other plan. I was going to run it on the green screen. Because it was supposed to be raining outside. It just one thing to the next thing to the next thing. And I could look at that as in God is telling me don't. Or I could look at it and say, God, you telling me that my plan wasn't where it need to be. So we're going to run it your way. So I'm driving home. I just left. I got 2 kids. And both kids had Valentine's Day party today. Shout out to their teachers. Because y'all the real goats. Because I couldn't do what you do every day. But neither here nor there. And someone was like, sit in the car and do it. I'm comfortable in my car. I'm real in my car. I don't know what it is, but if you listen to Dax, there's a song called Lonely Dirt Road. I might have jumbled up the name of the song, but it's a dope song. But anyways, basically he was driving on a dark road and that's where he found God. There's something about car rides. So I feel like God was like, you know how we do. So you know how we do. I'm inviting you in now. So all that to the side. My wretchedness out the way. Let's get into it. So if you're here, then you know this is the journey to self. The goal is I'm gonna read a chapter a week. The reason why I'm breaking it into 1 chapter a week is because there's gonna be a section at the end where I'll pose a question to you, and I want you to go in your inner closet and I want you to reflect on what you've heard. Play the video back as many times as you need to. Reach out, whatever you need to do. But we're going to grow together. And growth is not an instantaneous thing. It is a process. And so my prayer to God is if my pain can be my purpose, if but one person is impacted positively because I shared my story, I'll share from the rooftops and the valleys alike. All right? All right. We're going to get real. So I got my computer. This is where I've been writing the book. The book is not finished. It's a work in progress. But we're going to start. All right. No further ado. Disclaimer. If you read the other stories in this series, then you've probably read some of the stories contained within the pages of this book. However, I implore you to reread each story because the vantage point is different. And with a different vantage point comes a different lesson and a different perspective. Most things in life that we endure teach us different things. But sometimes it means reliving or re-experiencing it to see it from another perspective. That is a part of healing. So humbly, I ask you to heal with me as I heal with you. Also, these stories might include topics related to my relationships with other people. However, this is not a place where I'm willing to tear down anyone or set the record straight. My goal here is to hold myself fully accountable for the roles that I've played in various circles. If I focus my energy outwardly, nothing within me changes. And to have the life that I'm deserving of, that requires that I change, so I look inwardly. If you're someone that I've had relations with in the past, but we're no longer connected, I pray life is treating you well. If I cause any harm, regardless of how large or small, it is my genuine prayer that God heals you from any and all damage that I've caused on this journey to discovering me. I pray that whomever or whatever he supplies you with is what he planned just for you. May your life and the lives of all those attached to you be blessed so that it overflows and you pour into the cups of others from your overflow. These books are designed so that you read one chapter per session, not the full book in one time frame. More important than reading the book is processing what the messages mean to and for you. Your brain needs time to process on a deeper, less surface level. So take your time, because if done correctly, these books should be transformative. Each time I reread them, I find that I'm yet transformed again. All right, let's get into the introduction. Ooh, y'all say a prayer for me, because I don't do stuff like this. Okay, introduction. Looking back on life as a young girl, I can truthfully say that I didn't love myself. I'm not gonna cry. Sometimes when I'm quiet, I can recall the days where I'd take a bath towel and place it over my stomach to make it visually disappear. It was sort of the whole out of sight, out of mind concept, and it made me feel better about existing within my own body. Then there were the hermaphroditic thoughts that I had. I'd convinced myself that I was born with both sets of reproductive organs and that my parents had chosen to make me a girl when I was meant to be a boy due to my anatomy, high testosterone levels depicted by my large feet and hands, and extreme hairiness that I also thought was me having hirsutism. Then there were the fears that I was homosexual because I was always checking out the girls, but in reality, I was merely comparing myself to them because I always felt like they were prettier than I was. Being that I was raised in a two-parent household where I was constantly showered with love, I felt awful for being so insecure and constantly at war with myself internally. It made me feel worse because I was loved well. My parents loved me, my siblings loved me, my aunts, uncles, and cousins all loved me. Folks wanted their daughters to be more like me, yet here I was ashamed of who I was, while others placed me on pedestals. Probably the saddest part is that I can't even confidently identify the root cause of why I felt this way about myself. Yes, I was bullied and called all kinds of names, from pizza face due to a bout of really bad acne to four eyes. I've worn glasses since 4th grade in school. I was talked about for wearing hand-me-downs, having big feet, being super hairy, and everything under the sun. But I don't think the bullying was the root cause, because I wasn't bullied in my younger years. Honestly, at this point though, I don't think it's fully necessary or helpful to identify the reasons why I was broken. So I simply focus on the reasons I'm aware of and have sought out resolution from there. Let me not forget to mention that I also experienced suicidal ideations as a teenager. I never fully came up with a plan, but I did often imagine myself drinking bleach, which we always had around the house, and going to sleep without waking up. I also imagined running away from home a few times, but again, home wasn't my issue. Most people around me couldn't tell that I was sad, but I do remember my mom asking me about it one day. When I refused to tell her what was bothering me, she brought me a journal and encouraged me to write, because she told me that holding in my emotions could prove to be more dangerous than me releasing them. And whether she knows it or not, she's the reason I started writing. One of the most challenging parts of me looking back is asking myself why I didn't reach out for help. I've always had a great support system, folks that would literally drop everything they had going on just to help me. Yet I didn't. I never reached out, and I never even communicated that I struggled so deeply. No one really knew my feelings of inadequacy or understood that I felt like I was always the oddball out because I never fit in any of my environments. There's good news though. I learned to love myself, and I'm madly in love with me. Where my thoughts used to be centered around what I could do to become prettier or better, I now acknowledge that even at my baseline, I'm a force to be reckoned with, despite me having room for growth. I've learned to be both gentle and soft with me, and I've learned the art of building myself up. Whereas when I was a child, the environment around me lifted up accolades when my name was mentioned, nowadays it's the environment within me that offers the praises. I'm nothing if I'm not loved, and learning to love me allowed me to more completely and wholly love those around me, including my beautiful children. For my 34th birthday, my oldest brother recorded a message and sent it to me. In the message, he referred to me as a lady that is so divine that she walked the path that made sense to everyone else, then veered and found the journey that is specific to herself. The message in that video left me speechless, because never in a million years would I have defined my journey in such a way. But my brother was on the outside and looked into what he saw, and he was kind enough to share that vision with me. As my way of saying thanks, I'm sharing that vision with you all, because we all have to trek through to get to the journey of self, and I'm glad to have you here with me. All right, here we go. Chapter 1, what is love? Love is the environment that allows the rose to bloom exactly as it was created to do. It is quiet, peaceful, soft, and secure. Anything that finds itself tangled within its web is boosted to maximum strength without having so much as a catalyst. I wrote it. I did. I make sure my phone's not getting too hot. Okay. If you follow me for any amount of time, you know that faith is my guide. With that being the starting point, let's hone in on how the Bible defines love. Charity suffereth long and is kind. Charity envieth not. Charity vaunteth not itself, is not puffed up, doth not behave itself unseemly, seeketh not her own, is not easily provoked, thinketh no evil, rejoiceth not in iniquity, but rejoiceth in the truth, beareth all things, believeth all things, hopeth all things, endureth all things. Charity never faileth, but whether there be prophecies, they shall fail. Whether there be tongues, they shall cease. Whether there be knowledge, it shall vanish away. 1 Corinthians 13, 4-8, King James Version. Disclaimer, charity is translated as love in other versions. The definition of love is highly controversial, and honestly, rightfully so. Within the context of this book series, we will define love as a feeling of unconditionality. On its own, love is a mere feeling, and we know that feelings waver. However, when paired with appropriate actions that help to both reinforce and secure the feeling, love is able to grow into something that is immutable. In its immutable phase, it's able to shift back into its highest form, the form of a spirit. And that spirit resides within each of us. God is love, and he made us in his image. We are love. So when this text speaks of love, that is a type of love being addressed. God commanded us, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. Mark 12:31, King James Version. In other words, the way you love yourself is the standard for the way you love others. Unfortunately, many of us have reversed this verse and instead seek love from others that we haven't yet given to ourselves. That is, we expect external forces to love us better or greater than our own internal force. We want the love others give us to be the standard, and that's leaving us severely deprived of love. Additionally, it prohibits us from giving others actual love, which leads to a cycle of people not being loved properly and not loving properly. And without love, what are we? Better yet, who have we become as a result of fool's love? When I was in middle school, we learned about pyrite, which is nicknamed fool's gold. The nickname came about due to fool's gold's great resemblance to actual gold. It's said that even experienced jewelers can be tricked into believing that pyrite is real gold. There are differences, but one has to research and have a great deal of knowledge to separate the two, and yet mishaps are still not foolproof. What society has normalized as love is fool's love. And even those experienced or well-versed in love sometimes find it hard to tell the difference due to the similarities between the two. However, there are some tips and tricks that can help you identify which is which. I'm sure we've all seen the social media posts that advise to replace your lover's name where the Bible uses the word love in 1 Corinthians 13, 4-8. And I'm sure a lot of us have done that to test whether our partner loves us or not. But have we placed our own name in that same position in relation to ourselves? Have we tested ourselves to see if we even show up for ourselves the way we desire for the next person to? Another difference between love and fool's love is real love ain't earned. Fool's love is. It's common for society to teach us that one has to go through great lengths to earn our love. But when I refer back to biblical beginnings, I find that God never required that. And honestly, if he did, we'd likely all fail. What I read was, for God so loved the world that he gave. Not only did he not require us to earn his love, but he also used that same love and offered us something because of his love. So what that tells me is that real love can't be earned. It's simply given, and it gives. To some, I may sound like a blubbering idiot, but hear me out. What if society has it wrong? What if what you believe is your norm for love is really just fool's love? I know folks say that it's different because it's God, but he very literally created us in his image. His spirit resides within us. The difference is that we are also human, but let's not forget that we're spirit first, and that spirit is love. Again, we are love. Love ain't meant to be complicated. It's simple. But our human mind, as brilliant as it is, has complicated something that has been misunderstood for quite some time. The worst part is that we cannot effectively use what we don't accurately understand. If we never slow down to understand love, its beginnings, and its impact, we'll never be able to move fluidly in true love. Breaking it down, the journey of self is where we truly begin to understand love. The journey is bigger than just you. As I stated before, I was well loved as a child, and I'm a well-loved adult. I've been complimented all my life for being pretty, being kind, being able to articulate myself, being considerate, and all sorts of things. However, in the past, when these things were said to me, I could only hear them through the ears of my insecurity or fool's love. There was nothing wrong with what was being said to me. The problem existed within me. I couldn't hear or feel the love because I didn't love myself. So their words, as beautiful as they intended to be, were simply beautiful poison to my ears. And I didn't know just how lost I was for years. I thought what I was experiencing was completely normal. I thought everyone tore themselves down when they received or gave compliments. I thought everyone attacked themselves in the mirror. It seemed customary for folks to always find things about themselves that needed to be fixed. I thought everyone dealt with nightmares similar to mine, where I complained to God about just how unimpressive he'd made me. I never knew what I never knew I didn't know. The signs were there, though. For as smart as I've always been, I have a master's degree, by the way, I rotated in and out of relationships, convinced that God had told me each of them were my husband for varying reasons. And don't misunderstand me. Chasing love and relationships wasn't the whole problem. Settling was my issue. It's said that your partner is a reflection of how you feel about yourself. And judging from my partners back in the day, I'd say that's a very accurate statement. That reflection both hurt and helped me on my quest as I journeyed to myself. I have stayed in so many situations, relationships, jobs, spaces, etc., far past the expiration date because I was in love with the person or the idea. And that love caused so many pains, not the growing kind either. I've dealt with everything from infidelity to abuse to stagnation and regression, all in the name of love. Love, the one thing that both joins us all together, but also tears us completely apart. That love, that's what I was chasing. Let's be clear, I was never a victim. Nobody ever made me stay in a situation longer than I chose. In fact, I was often the one coercing others, and myself, to stay past the brink of termination. My thought was generally, if I can love them more, or if I can love them harder. The problem was that I never turned that love inwardly. I never thought if I loved myself more. Instead, I loved others more than I loved myself. Needless to say, I eventually came to a fork in the road. So let's talk about how I got there. There was a time when I was a sole income earner and was working as an independent contractor at the time, so my income was unstable. There were 4 of us in the house, 2 of which were children under 2. I was on food stamps at the time, and they were up for renewal, but I had somehow not realized that it was due the very next day. By this time, my car had been repossessed, was taken a month after I gave birth to my youngest, and my family in the area were all working until way past the time the DHS closed. To feed my family, the only option I had was to walk to the DHS office, which was about 8 miles round trip. Luckily, I didn't have to take my kids with me though, because my partner at the time stayed home with them. The walk was brutal, but as Nietzsche said, any man with a why can bear with almost any how. My why was I couldn't afford to feed my kids on my own merit. So I had to do what I had to do, and I made it. I turned the paperwork in, stopped by Whataburger for a drink, and walked back home, politely declining offers from strangers to drive me the rest of the way. And when I got home, I walked in the door feeling accomplished and hugged my babies because every sacrifice that I made was for them. A few days later, though, I called to check on my paperwork because it wasn't showing as processed. When I called, they told me that my paperwork hadn't been received on time. In full transparency, this is harder than I thought. In full transparency, I had a breakdown on the phone. Through tears, I informed the lady how I walked from one city to the next just to turn in the paperwork, and how I dated it and placed it in a special box designated for it. I told her I had to feed my kids and pleaded with her to understand, and I know God favors me because she fixed my issue that day. I wish I could say that was the pivotal point of my downward spiral, but there's more. I had way more accounts and collections than I'd ever even known possible. Every time I needed to attend an appointment to sell insurance, I had to rent a car because mine had been repossessed, and my credit didn't deem me capable of purchasing another. We were barely making rent payments on time, and all the utility bills except the water were grossly behind. At one point, I had to borrow money from family just to pay rent. And during those times, I couldn't withdraw the funds all from one bank, so I had to essentially walk from bank to bank to put all the funds together so that I could walk down to the landlord's office just to pay rent. The second month when no family would help us out, and I said it in a malicious way, I knew we were going to be evicted. I couldn't see any other way, and quite frankly, I was exhausted. To keep from being formally evicted, I called my aunt to ask her if my family could move into one of her homes in my hometown, and thank God she agreed. I then sold most of our possessions for as cheap as possible, just so I could raise money to rent a van and move us back home. I'd advised my partner that we had a solid place to fall into to start over, but he politely declined my offer due to his own personal reasons. So in the middle of July, I packed a minivan with what was left of our possessions. And my two kids, one 6 months and the other just over 2, and I traveled just under 300 miles to our new home and my new life as a single mother of 2 under 2, with the youngest still breastfeeding. Talk about scared, broken, distressed, and embarrassed. I don't think there's a negative emotion that I wasn't overwhelmingly feeling at that time. We made it home safely, and my family in the area were very accommodating in having us there. More than anything, my parents, all 4, were just happy to know that we were safe, because though they'd only known a fraction of what we dealt with, even that was too much for them to fully grasp. Another aunt, may she rest in heaven, pulled me to the side not long after we arrived. She told me that there was no shame in the decisions I'd made, and told me stories of how she also moved home with 2 kids after failing miserably. The difference between her and I, though, was that I had a master's degree. Education was supposed to prevent situations like this from occurring, right? If that were true, how had I very literally hit rock bottom? The simple answer is that no amount of education can outrank the love that I hadn't learned to give myself. Adjusting to my new life was brutal. I had 2 kids that solely depended on me, yet I was fully dependent on others. I didn't have a car or a job. I just had a dream which seemed insignificant compared to the nightmare that I was living. I was super depressed, being just over 7 months postpartum. Yet I had no way of fully dealing with any of my reasons because I had to be a mom full time. I was up all day and had nightmares all night. Life was rough. I had help, and God knows I'm grateful for everyone that stepped in, because that's the only reason I'm here to tell my story. After giving birth to my youngest, for the first time in my life, I started having migraines. I noticed that they were triggered by me going too many days without proper sleep. When I was living in the house with another adult, it was more bearable, more manageable. However, when I became a full-time single mother in the manner that I did, sleep was the last thing I was able to get consistently. This led to regular migraines, which led to days of me vomiting. I'd spend days in the bed, unable to make a meal for my oldest because I could just offer a boob to my youngest or myself. I then used the little money I had, because I started independent contract work from home that paid very little, to buy pizza since they were the only place that would deliver to our address. My daughter, being young and impressionable, watched me clean to the toilet despite my trying to protect her from it. One day, I watched her as she proudly displayed what she learned. I was crushed. I felt lower than low. I truly felt like a failure because what had I taught her? I had unknowingly introduced her to habits that could drastically and awfully change the trajectory of her life. It was that moment that I decided to heal. It was that moment that I pleaded with God with all the strength and sincerity that I could muster to help me become better, because it would literally kill me to destroy my kids. My first question to self was, why don't you love you enough? What I didn't understand then was that answering that question authentically would completely change my life and theirs for the better. It's taken me some time, but I now realize that I don't have to chase love. I'm simply required to exist to receive what God has for me. Don't get me wrong, faith requires work, and in no means am I suggesting otherwise. I'm simply saying that love resides within me. I'm not hard-pressed for love because I learned to love myself. And in doing so, I was able to see just how much God loves me and always has. And I was able to clearly see how much those around me truly love me. Nowadays, the love I provide is pure. It's genuine. It's authentic. It's part of me, not who I position myself to be. I no longer give love. I exude love. And that change has transitioned the way I see the world, both individually and collectively. Nowadays, it's easy to flip on the television, turn on the podcast, or scroll social media to find posts about love. Everyone claims to be an expert in it, yet we have a nation of folks that aren't being loved properly. We recently popularized the phrase self-care and self-love, but we show the aesthetic side of it, often allowing others to misinterpret the process as being pretty and fulfilling. The truth, though, is that the process is both ugly and challenging. Honestly, learning to love myself was perhaps one of the most grueling journeys that I'd ever taken on, because it required me to unlearn everything that I'd ever known. But let me say, this has been the most rewarding journey that I've ever been blessed to experience, because the woman that went in is not even remotely similar to the one that came out of the fire. All right. Message. Life hits us all, and we all go through things. The lesson isn't in the going through, but in how we get through what we go through. The goal is to grow through it. So many times we give our power to external forces, thus leaving ourselves unprotected and in compromising positions. If we'd learn to love ourselves first, it would literally change the trajectory of everything about us. I won't promise you that it's easy, but it's undoubtedly worth it. Action item. Here's where your homework kicks in. Go outside or somewhere serene. Safely disconnect from everything if possible. Take some time to just focus on what love means to you. You don't have to buy my definition or the definition of anyone else, but take time to conceptualize, verbalize, and jot down what love means to you. You'll need this definition as you begin to analyze the love you give others and that you give to yourself. Next, so part B to your homework. This one really gonna hurt. As you've defined love, Who currently gives love to you? Bonus. Are you included in this list? End of chapter 1.